I came out to my mom when I was in middle school. I was like 11 or 12. Um, I the way I decided to come out to her was I wanted to rip off the bandage, essentially. And so what I ended up doing was she was dropping me off at school, and as I'm like getting out of the car, I like have like I'm halfway out, and I turn back and just really quickly say, "Mom, I think I'm gay." Slam the door, and I run away. I just run into the building, and like not until it closes do I feel secure enough to actually look back. And so I turn around and look into the glass, and her face is just totally it's it was somewhere caught between being startled to what could possibly be like some sort of like epic terror. And so she turns to me and starts drifting the car, and the car slowly starts moving forward. Her head turns back and faces forward, and it zooms out. It just zooms out of the parking lot, and we don't talk about it for months. And so with this little like what could have been just like 30 seconds ended up being what kick-started our whole what would be our whole experiences for the next 6 years or so. One of the things that I, as a little tip of like for me, or I guess it's kind of like mantra. The more I look like a raccoon, the closer to like diva I can get. So I'm just like, yeah, let's just put all that eyeliner on. The bigger the better, really. As a little kid, I loved Greek mythology. Artemis was a spectacular figure that I was just in awe of. I loved the connection to the moon, and it was this kind of like seeing how fluid and shifting the moon was, the connections with Artemis as this strong, independent figure, this woman who just took no shit. I was just like, yes, that has to be part, that I have to incorporate that. The first person I ever had a really genuine and deep connection with was my great grandmother, my abuelita. She, like, my parents separated and divorced when I was really young, but she was always this, like, she was this source of stability. And she was a woman that she had lived most of her life in El Salvador, came in like when in her like 70s, 80s, and she couldn't read, she couldn't write. She was constantly taking care of me and being there and listening to me, which was something that like no one else really has had the capacity to do. Not to the degree that she can or could. And I have all these fond memories whenever I would come home. She would make these pupusas. We would like eat, and I would just tell her like what I'm thinking, or how, like, she would ask me stuff about school. And as we were having these conversations, she would always be taking napkins and drawing flowers and roses in particular. And I wanted to capture that. And so rose just seemed like the most obvious thing that I could pull from that. Like, my spirituality is definitely very eclectic, in the sense that or rather, yeah, eclectic and syncretic. Like, there's like folk Catholicism is for me is a mix of kind of these kind of Latin indigenous beliefs with Roman Catholicism as brought over from the Spaniards. Separated from the church when I was really, really little. I was like, I don't want to be a Catholic. This just makes no sense. Like, I'm not accepted. Why do I want to be a part of that? And then I ended up kind of making this kind of full circle eventually, after going through so many different places. And I came back with this kind of esoteric and queer perspective of what God was or is. Definitely, if you look at if I were to try to describe my spirituality, I like to think of myself as kind of like dissonant spiritualist, where it doesn't really fit in a category. but you can kind of see some of the general frameworks. So, like say, like if you were to look at my altar, like you could probably guess it's like somewhat like Catholic. But there's like some of the books on there would tell you otherwise. So, sinner, heretic, drag queen, I do it all. I'm good for bar mitzvahs. Whatever. I realized that Artemis leaves this sort of residue. So we're like, at the very beginning, she and I were very separate, and I still kind of talk about it that way, just because it's just very easy for me to do that, to fall back on that kind of language. But I've realized how, like, as I was creating this character, creating this identity that was very external, I realized how infused and linked we were and are. To the point where, like, now, like, there's not much of a distinction, I feel, between Artemis and Sammy. And Artemis in very many ways has become this source of strength and this source of this place of refuge in some points, really. Now, looking at it like a little bit of a year later, like me taking off my wig and everything is just perfectly like normal. And it's just who I am either way, you know. And so, yeah. If it wasn't for what I do and the way I do everything, I don't think I would be as strong as a person. I certainly wouldn't be as interesting. My 2 cents. And then again, being normal is just so highly overrated anyway, really. Who wants to be normal? Who wants to just be like everyone else? That sucks. I mean, I will suffer through a really tight tuck before I ever fucking try to do something like that.